How you doing, everyone? Welcome back to another ESO video. Today we're going to be going over a direct comparison with a very specific build on my channel, but more importantly, we're doing a comparison between Live and PTS regarding the Lightning Staff changes. Like, how bad is that AoE? So what we did is we went on the PTS. As you can see here, we're in Depths of Malatar. We've got 3 Lazy Sorcs and the Bobby build. Links are in the description below if you want them. And of course, we are using the exact same setup with different people, of course, on the PlayStation 5. So the variations are limited to only player skill. All we're doing is putting down a wall of elements and a heavy attack and making sure the tank stacks stuff. Now, I know that the most scary part right now is the fact that your lightning staff splash attacks do less damage because they only do the last pop, not the initial wind up. But as you can see here, the variation between Live and PTS and potential changes for it are not that far apart. What we found is that single target happens to be a little bit more, whereas your splash damage tends to be a little bit less. And where the variation comes in is basically, normally you are hitting a main target and you're splash damaging the adds, which tend to have less health. The single target fight is exactly the same time, if not maybe slightly less. So the overall encounter is either quicker or no change at all. What you'll find is the surrounding enemies still die before the main target. So, again, the timer is no different, or a little bit faster. With the adds taking a little bit longer to die, it just means that the tank needs to maintain their focus a little bit longer, and the healer is a little bit more relevant. As far as the DPS is concerned, you don't have to do anything different at all. So, main target, same or quicker. Surrounding targets still die before the boss. Now, we did a full run through of several different dungeons on both servers. It turned out that the Depths of Malatar run on PlayStation 5 with the same setup, where you just drop a wall and heavy attack and occasionally execute, with the same tank, with the same buffs and debuff timers and everything exactly the same, obviously with different people being a variable. The difference was 4 minutes. Same setup, same dungeon, no deaths, everything exactly the same. We were 4 minutes faster on PTS. That was something we really did not expect to see. We expected to see a small change, but even in this fight, as you can see here, single target is absolutely fine, and that ad is melting next to it. And this is a PTS demonstration. This boss is actually the PTS version. So, obviously, there's not much of a change there. Now, when it comes to other parts of specific fights, maybe trials, etc., where all the enemies have the same amount of health, you can obviously consider that it's going to take you a bit longer to kill them. Although, strictly speaking, if you kill the single target a little bit quicker, then overall you've got the time to then switch targets onto another one, which might already be potentially nearly dead. Even here, this again is on PTS. You can see that we're heavy attack and the Watcher, but everything else is getting nuked. The Watcher tends to be the strongest target. Strangely enough, everyone on every server leaves their Archer till last. Don't know why, but they do. Anyway, now we're going to see a flat side-by-side demonstration of a boss fight that does have lots and lots of single target and area of effect opportunities, where both scenarios could potentially end up very, very different if the change is that bad. So for those that don't quite understand, every single tick of your lightning staff still does apply to the single target. It doesn't apply to AoE. The only one that does is the pop at the end. So you got to make sure you finish your heavy attacks. As you can see here, we're pretty much on par with each other. The yellow orb spawns, we're both in the same area. Obviously, PTS is a little bit faster, but we're still doing the same stuff, the same mechanics, etc., etc. Obviously, again, player skill is a variable, and obviously attention paid can contribute to that. And as you can see on the PlayStation side of things, on the right-hand side, we've gone straight for the orb on the PC. On PTS, we've kind of waited a little bit. So you have to now consider that there are some seconds lost there. But the fight is still fairly consistent. The health is roughly the same for both bosses. The adds are dying equally as fast, even though they're all being treated exactly the same. Wall of elements on the ground, heavy attack, happy days. Now, this fight, again, we have not quite noticed the red orb in the room. We haven't pushed that far yet, so we've got to go look for it. We are obviously ahead on PlayStation because we've done the mechanics sooner. If we'd have gone over to it at the same time, we'd be roughly neck and neck. Now, with that being a variable, with that being something to consider, the fact that we took longer to notice the particular mechanic or engage with it, obviously that should mean that this fight does take a considerable amount longer on the PTS than PlayStation, right? So, we are behind. Well, not quite. The area of effect damage is still very, very good. The single target feels slightly higher, so we've actually caught up. So while there is a big gap between two of the orb phases that we definitely fell behind on, you can now see that although the PlayStation is now finished, we're only 3 or 4 seconds behind on the PC. So if it wasn't for those two phases where we were actually slower because of our own feet, it would actually be about the same. Now, the same can be said for these ad pulls as well. Obviously, it makes sense that certain tanks can pull better than others. It makes sense that certain builds are built for certain things and others aren't. But again, wall of elements on the floor, heavy attack into a crowd. That's essentially what the lightning staff is really taking advantage of on these particular builds. And the same pull, regardless of how scatty it is, ends up roughly the same as far as stacking is concerned. Eventually, everything is kind of borderline in the middle, apart from a couple of ads. And as you can see, again, on PC, we are slightly faster. Even though the ads take less damage from the splash, the single target is higher, so the pop is bigger, and things go down a bit faster in some areas. Again, this room here, obviously, the PlayStation side of things, we ran into the room a little late, but regardless of the outcome of this particular situation, just look at the left-hand side here. Look on the PC side of things, where you are seeing what's to come, and look at how fast things actually go down with the same setup as you're already using. It's not a negative at all. And one final demonstration here before we get into the dummy side of things. This is a boss that takes advantage of both single target and area of effect if you can stack the enemies. Look at both of them. They both started exactly the same time. We've got exactly the same setups. Obviously, we have to find the boss. Now, PlayStation, we found the boss right away. PC, it took us a little while to do it. But as you can see on PC, we're actually doing more damage. Not because PC does more damage, it's because on PTS, the lightning staff has changed. Our general everyday DPS in single target is actually now a bit higher. So, while the AoE has been reduced, the single target is up. The encounter is the same duration, if not quicker, and you just have to deal with the ads for longer. So the side effect to this isn't that DPS is bad. The side effect is that the healers and the tanks now have to work a little harder because they're relevant for more periods of time in the fight. As you can see here, exactly the same time in the fight, exactly the same phase where both bosses are actually teleporting, and on the new variation of the lightning staff, we've actually done more damage, and on the old variation, we're actually a bit behind. So take that with a pinch of salt if you want, but now I'm going to show you a side-by-side dummy demonstration where we've got an Iron Atro in the middle and 6 regular target dummies around the front of it. So this is an AoE scenario with a big boss in the middle. I'm going to do the same rotation on both sides, where I basically drop the meteor and a wall of elements, and then consistently fire a wall of elements every single time I finish a heavy attack. Up until the second meteor, in which case all I do is hold heavy attack with no extra casts of wall of elements, and both of these setups are identical. Exactly the same setup on both different servers. The only difference is the passive change to the lightning staff. And what you'll see here is that damage-wise, single target, the lightning staff on this particular build, it may vary based on your setups, is actually doing a tiny bit more damage. And in area of effect, obviously, because we've got those rolling ticks that don't splash anymore, you'll notice that the AoE is slightly less. So here you can see that the target dummies are around 34-40% health, and these ones are pushing 50%. The single target, however, there is a difference. As you can see here, obviously, the single target is almost 10k more, which is a considerable amount on a single target, and that is not a full fight. Obviously, that will escalate as you go, but the AoE is down, but still not bad. So again, the fights will last roughly the same amount of time, if not less time, but the ads will obviously be in the room slightly longer, so your tanks and healers have to try harder. That's including the tanks and healers for once, rather than making them feel irrelevant because everything's pretty much dead anyway. So hopefully that helped, hopefully that wasn't too boring, hopefully that highlights the difference in live versus what's coming, and hopefully it's not too much of a panic for you if you're using 1-bar builds, because they are by no means dead. Not in the slightest. In fact, if you are single target, you're actually doing a bit more. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. I hugely appreciate the support. If you're not subscribing, obviously hit that button. It is free. And don't forget the notification bell so you know when videos go live. And last but not least, obviously there are social links in the description below for Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, the website ZynoGaming.com. I know Twitter changed, I'm aware. And of course, Patreon, if you want to support financially, you can join us in the private Discord channel over there. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.